Okay, good afternoon, Stu and Delina. Welcome. Welcome to Prescott Indivisible. I know we've met you before and we're so happy to have you back here. Both Stu and Delina are running for office in LCD4 for Paul, the seat that Paul Gosar occupies. I'm not going to say it's his seat because he doesn't belong in it. So I will start now. Stu, you're the first answerer here, right?
Uh-huh.
So this is your question. Do you support amending the U.S. Constitution to make clear that corporations and other artificial entities do not have constitutional rights, and that money is not speech and campaign spending should be limited to regulation?
Yeah, so first off, thank you, everybody. We certainly appreciate the chance to speak with you all before voting starts. So I personally am very grateful. I'm going to use the first part of my 3 minutes because I saw that Judy Stahl just came on.
Yay!
So if tonight, before we're finished, everybody please donate $5 to her, and we'll gauge how good I did tonight based on how much money she gets, because that's an amazing campaign. So let me answer your question. And the answer is, I do support trying to get Citizens United and all of the corporate money and influences out of our politics. In fact, I stand for public financing of campaigns. What worries me about trying to get, though, this done through an amendment is the amount of time it would take. We've seen, especially with Republican majority, conservative Supreme Court, how hard it is for us to get something from the constitutional standpoint, the decision-making of the court. So I worry that the possible decades it would take for us to do that through an amendment sets us up for another 10 or more years of what we're facing right now, and potentially longer. I mean, look what it's taken for the Equal Rights Amendment to try and have any hope of being ratified enough. So I think there are other ways for us to go after the issue. And I remember the first time that campaigns finally had to say, you know, I'm Stu Starkey, I support this message, and things like that. That didn't always exist. So I'm wondering if there are other ways for us to go after these PACs and corporations who strictly are in this as hit pieces against other candidates. And I would like to see us start to do some incremental things that way, whether through the Federal Election Commission or, you know, TV stations all have to, you know, renew their broadcasting licenses, and see if there's other ways for us to attack the issue as well. Because clearly, and we see it now, we've got to make a change.
Thank you, Stu. Thank you for that. And Delina, would you like me to read it again?
No, I heard the question.
I sent it to you too, so yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Well, I believe absolutely that we have to get dark money out of politics, period. I have already signed the American Promise Pledge, and that is to make candidates accountable to get the 28th Amendment passed. And I do believe that we need to have an amendment to get this dark money out. I also signed the MoveToAmend.org petition to also get the dark money out, and also to pass a new new amendment. So corporate donations, as you know, they're shielding donors. They're pushing their political agendas. They're not addressing issues that are facing hardworking Americans. They don't care about our healthcare, our public education, the environment, and more. You see Paul Gosar getting donations from the Koch brothers and from other energy companies. You see how he votes in regards to climate change and environmental policy. And that has to change. And that is dark money. And that is not free speech. But also, if you notice, corporations should only have property rights, but not liberty rights. Because liberty rights are your personal autonomy. It has a conscience. It's a human right, and not for corporations. And this is why I will fight to make sure that we have an amendment to get dark money out of Congress.
Thank you, Delina. Thank you
Sure.
for that. Okay, so question 2, maybe I'll do Delina first and then Stu. Do you support, oh, sorry, where do you stand on the Green New Deal, Delina?
Well, we have to get the Green New Deal started, and that's just, there's just no question about it. But as we talked about before, we first have to get the dark money out of politics. Me and Hero Tipernini, we were talking about this in regards to a while back, in regards to having dark money. And there's no way that we can push this Green New Deal agenda unless we get it out. Because money is going to make these congressmen that have been in Congress for a long time, like Gosar, they're just going to continue not voting for the climate change. As a matter of fact, HR, I can't remember, one of the HRs, the current ones, passed the House, and Gosar, of course, voted against it for climate change. It was an infrastructure bill to include all kind of guidelines in regards to climate change. So, you know, I wanted to say that, you know, the Green New Deal is exactly what the moon landing was back in the 60s. But I love JFK's saying when he said, we do things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And that's what we're going to have to do to push the Green New Deal. But we also have to remember that we are going to have to continue using oil and gas until we get these renewable energies put in place. And a lot of our states, Arizona is one of them, is going to be hit hard with the energy companies. And so what we need to do is ensure that we're going to go ahead and give incentives to these businesses so that they are creating green technology jobs. And it amazes me that New Jersey is the #1 solar energy state, and we're not. And how, you know, this is insane. So this is why we need to have a president, an EPA director, a US Congress, and a US Senate that's all Democrats. And that's the way we're going to be able to push this new Green Deal. And that's what we need to do for November.
Thank you, Delina. Thank you for that. And Stu, same question for you. How do you feel about the Green New Deal? Where do you stand?
So I think it's an exciting package. I think it's exciting how it first came about, that it was a freshman congressman who showed what an impact she could have by launching the Green New Deal program. And between AOC and Ed in the Senate, you know, to be able to launch it and have it take such a foothold so fast in the new political culture and climate. I think one place where I may disagree a little bit of whether or not this can work based on dark money or no dark money is the foothold it has with the kids and with the younger generations and with the movement we're seeing now from the kids. And I believe it's really environmental issues that first motivated the young people into the kind of masses that we're now seeing today based around social justice. So I'm truly hoping that that generation and their new political activism really began with the concept of the Green New Deal. And I think that they can carry this a long way, you know, with all of us, you know, working together in the process. So it really began with the concept of working on greenhouse gas emissions. And I think that's vital for us to do this and to truly have, you know, a Congress and an executive that believes in climate change and that the science is real, you know, is paramount. So I support the Green New Deal in its full package, but I believe there are also pieces that we need to go after individually rather than hoping to pass everything in its entirety. One of the things that has always, you know, the last 5 or 6 years been an issue for me is watching, you know, the crisis in Flint, Michigan with what happened with the drinking water. And we're going to talk that a little later in the other issues because that was done because it was able to abuse poor people. And when we get to the question on racism and systemic racism, that's a big part of it. But being able to work on all of these issues, not just comprehensively under the package, but looking at what can we do about wind and solar output, What can we do about clean water and access to clean water? You know, we've seen the devastation on the Navajo reservation. You know, it's all related together, and the Green New Deal can be a big part of that, you know, conclusion, but we can't wait for that. Everybody living on the Navajo nation by now should certainly have access to drinking water. So we need to attack those issues rather than just wait for a full package. But, you know, I'm a New Yorker, as you can tell from my voice, and I remember in the winter, simple things to make the house more energy, you know, independent. You know, putting stripping up along the windows to make sure that you kept the heat in and the cold out, those kind of things. Well, think about doing programs and the jobs it creates by doing simple things like that, making America more energy independent, you know, just at that simple level. You know, other things that we can do, rejoin the Paris Accord, work on our infrastructure, our high-speed rail lines to get us out of cars, more mass transportation, restore our national parks, which was what I said would be my first bill. Stop fracking immediately. So that's my buzzer. So there's my 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Stu. That's great. Okay, so then Stu, you want to take the next one then?
Sure.
Immigration reform passed the Senate once upon a time, only to have John Boehner fail to call for a vote. It would have been passed in a bipartisan manner. Obama and the Democrats failed to take it up when they had the majority. The question is, would you introduce or support an immigration reform bill, or at least a bill to codify DACA? The legislation has already been written.
Yeah, so I've made it very clear since I got into this, and a lot of it centers on how I've spent, you know, the last 20 years of my life in South Phoenix, you know, at my school with my families. I consider them, you know, my own kids. So I will not settle for anything less than citizenship for those kids. For me, dreamers deserve citizenship. We need to work on the entire immigration pathway, but as far as it relates to DACA, I won't settle, and I will work aggressively for citizenship and nothing else. It is, to me, worthy less than that for these kids. So that's where I stand on the issue of DACA. I want citizenship for those kids. I have had them for the last 20 years come through my school. I know them as I know my own kids, and I don't believe we can accept anything less than that. And I think as we talk about that, we have to take it into the other issues that are clear right now in CD4. We still have kids sitting in cages, kids who were taken from parents and separated from their parents, you know, the same way. And you know, look, as I've said, maybe some of you heard before, I remember people coming to my house as a young kid, and on their arm, friends of my mother's, they had numbers tattooed. And this issue truly reflects who we are and what our moral stance is as people. And what are we willing to do about it? I think anything less than the idea of saying somebody is a full-fledged citizen in this country for those kids is immoral on our part. And I think you mentioned it yourself. Obama failed to act. And it is one of the marks for me that when I go out and we can speak, Democrats have failed these kids as much as Republicans have failed these kids. They just failed by taking an action. The Republicans fail because they espouse hate for these kids. But it's not acceptable to me, and I would accept absolutely nothing less than the fact that these kids will someday raise their hand and become American citizens.
Thank you so much for that, Stu. That's great. Delina, can you take a shot at that? Would you like me to ask it again, or do you have it?
Nope, I'm ready for it. Thank you.
Sure.
So, you know, right now we already know that HR 6 passed, the American Dream and Promise Act passed the House. But where's it sitting? McConnell's desk. So, of course, we need to drastically, again, we're going to repeat this over and over again. We need good representatives and leaders in the House and in the Senate in November. And we need to get rid of GOSAR. So that, of course, you know that was going to streamline DACA so that they become citizens, and that there is no other choice than for them to become citizens. But what was great was when the Supreme Court blocked Trump's, the Supreme Court blocked Trump from ending DACA. So that was fantastic. I mean, that was a cause for celebration for all of us, to be honest with you. But I do believe in immigration reform, and I know the bill that John McCain and Ted Kennedy worked on. And it passed the Senate, but again, it did sit on Boner's desk. And we have to get that passed. And I promise that when I get into office, I'm going to create the House bill that was John McCain and Ted Kennedy's bill. Because what it would do, and I agree with this to some extent, is, you know, paying fines, paying any back taxes, because a lot of them pay taxes. We know this. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars sitting in a reserve right now from taxes paid from immigrants that have paid into it, that want to become citizens. Of course, pass criminal background checks, meet the employment and English requirements, and earn the permanent legal status, and then get citizenship. I do not want any deportations whatsoever. Because if we continue that, look at the economic impact it's going to have on Arizona. If we keep deporting these immigrants, our economy would crash. It would severely crash, all the way from rentals to food stores to any kind of retail. I mean, our economy would crash, and what would we do? There's no way to make that up. So having deportations in order is ridiculous. So yes, absolutely, I would work on that deal. And to be honest with you, to me, that's a national security issue if we don't do something soon about immigration reform, because we need to make everybody legal, get them out of the shadows. I've heard from immigrants, and they said that they know criminals in their area, but they won't report them because they're so afraid to report them because they're going to be deported. Now, that is not the way that we need to run our country. And so I believe we need to get them out of the shadows and give them a life, give them what they need, and that's citizenship.
Thank you, Delina. Maria, should I ask that question now, or should we do it after? The one that just came in the chat. Do you prefer I do it after, Mavis, after all the questions are done?
Yes, after all the questions. Go ahead with number 4. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Delina, so the next question is, how do you understand systemic racism, and what do you think can be done about it?
Well, I typed this up because I want to make sure that I get this completely correct here. Because I know about systemic racism, because I grew up in a low-income neighborhood, many with Cuban, Puerto Rican, Blacks, and I've seen it firsthand. But systemic or institutional racism is embedded deeply in our society. It's in our economic system, our educational system, our healthcare system, and I've seen that as a nurse, in our criminal justice system. And we see that with people that become criminals. They have to pay $100 or $500 to get out of jail, and they can't even afford that. That's insane. This racial inequality for people of color includes housing insecurity, the racial wealth gap, education, and policing. And these are all connected. Do you remember back in the 70s, the redlining of areas where people of color were redlined so that they wouldn't get any investment money, which made it so that their homes would never rise in value like the white neighborhoods. And so we have suppressed them with this redlining intentionally. It still persists, and it makes me very angry. That's why I'm reading this, because I've seen it, and I just don't think that this should be happening in our country. Statistically, a white person gets a job before a person of color, and I've seen that happen many, many times. Nursing, even as a finance director in hospitals, I've seen where people would hire a white person above a person of color. And that person of color had much more better qualifications. And it needs to stop. If a white person makes $100, a Black person today is only getting $57. So we need to acknowledge racism exists, and we need to elect, again, I'm just going to keep repeating, strong leaders who are not afraid to sit down with any organization or any leaders in the communities, in the federal governments, in the private sectors, to be able to discuss what is going on. And as I said, I grew up in a low-income neighborhood. I've seen it. I've seen how police who did not live in the area, how they treated my Black friends differently. I had and I'll tell the story here. When I was younger, when I was a teenager, you know how you get these, jobs through school, so you have some spending money. And I worked in this Italian little restaurant that made pizzas. And my friend next door, who was Black, needed a job. And we desperately needed to have somebody, and they wouldn't hire her. And she had work in a pizzeria and chicken place and pork place. She'd worked in restaurants before. She knew more than I did, and they wouldn't hire her. And I mean, I could tell you more stories. This needs to stop. I will not tolerate it.
Thank you, Delina. Thank you. So Stu, same question for you. How do you understand systemic racism, and what do you think can be done about it?
Well, I always, for some reason, talk to you about my life, because let's face it, a lot of things we stand for are measured in the experiences that we've had. If you know South Phoenix at all, you know my school is 88% Hispanic, 11% African American. And what I can tell you is, as we face another school opening year with kids online not being allowed to go to school, we have entire pockets of our neighborhood that Cox won't serve, putting in internet. So when you look at systemic racism, you look at the fact that we can see kids who need an education and opportunity, but yet we won't serve neighborhoods. So it is embedded in a lot more ways than we instantly want to think about, but ways that impact kids every day. It's done in the fact that most Republicans want to eliminate, no less, of course not raise, the minimum wage. Well, think about who in our society take a lot of the minimum wage job in terms of having to support their families. So we have basically set a next generation into poverty by not paying a livable wage. We make healthcare through corporations, and who did we just say are the ones without those kind of jobs? It's our African American and Hispanic families. So now they don't get the kind of treatment and the kind of care that they need. And why is COVID having such an extended impact on African American communities? It's because they lack the healthcare, the traditional healthcare that they haven't had their entire lives. So their instances of diabetes and other illnesses, are more striking and make them susceptible to COVID. That's not an accident. It's a system we have created. And the system we've created has been leaning towards the elite and the aristocracy the entire history of our country. And that's where we truly, when you get systemic into the equation, that's truly where we have to work. So we have formed this year a garden at our school. And the first plaque going up in the garden is to honor George Floyd. And it is to create an awareness in our children about what is taking place and how this new movement is being passed on to them, and how it's their responsibility to react to what is needed in this movement. I guarantee you there is not a white person who has been killed because a police officer spent 8 minutes and 46 seconds on the victim's neck. And those are the kind of institutional changes we have to talk about making. We need to look at police reform, not because we're surrounded by bad cops. We have to look at it because the system allows the occasional bad cop to do that thing. But that bad cop, if we trace it back, when they already have 8 or 9 incidents and write-ups in their record, and still goes on to maybe have to switch forces. We talk about teachers who move from job to job because they're not a quality teacher. We face the same thing with a police officer. So we have had systemic racism. I remember the incidents of blocking the steps, George Wallace, blocking the steps at the University of Alabama. So throughout our entire system, through slavery and on to today, we have maintained a, let's face it, white movement that has created a government that serves it first and best. And we need to address that. And I really hope the generations coming up behind me are ready to keep that voice going.
Thank you for that. I'd actually like to follow up on this, but Stu, I want to tell you, I remember being a little kid when George Wallace was running and they told us he was going to make us go to school on Saturdays. And I just thought I could never vote for that guy. That would be so terrible. But I'm wondering, I'd like to ask both of you, what would you do about systemic racism legislatively? So you both recognize that it's an issue, but what would you do in Congress to start dismantling it? What kind of bills would you put forward in terms of ending this systematic racism that we're so entrenched in?
Yeah. So Delina first, or myself, or?
Go ahead, Stu, you're on, and then Delina can go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So what I think we can legislate, both at the federal level and at the state level, to try to break this lock that racism has in our society, is look at programs that have been proposed by the progressives already. Raising the minimum wage will certainly make an impact in the quality of life and the opportunities that people have and that families have. But we can take a look at what's in our school curriculums from the state and local level. Our curriculums continue to espouse a systemic racist point of view, and it whitewashes over incidents that are never even covered that highlight the racism that's taking place in this country. We can change the medical system legislatively, get to a Medicare coverage for all system so that that kid does go and have the same opportunity to health care that a middle-class person would have. So there are a lot of areas in the progressive agenda, but we also need to make sure that we never tolerate the things we see. I don't know if any of you follow somebody named Sean King, but I do. And he is doing an amazing job at highlighting instances across this country and having activists continue to keep the pressure on, so that we're seeing charges come up on cases that were a year ago that otherwise would have just been never heard of. So it's maintaining that voice and being an activist that says the things that we're seeing are not good enough, whether it's the legislation that we help pass, or it's simply by being a voice that says the inequality that we live in today is not acceptable and we won't tolerate it anymore, both through legislation or simply by saying never again, as we like to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Stu. Thank you. And Delina, can you take a shot at that one? What would you do legislatively in terms of systemic racism?
Sure. Well, currently, right now, Barbara Bass, or not Barbara, Representative Karen Bass from California, she's promoting HR 7120, which would hold the law enforcement accountable for misconduct in court, improve transparency through data collection, and most of all is to reform the police training and policies. So we need to start making sure that, and this is what I would also do in Congress, because I would support this bill, but I would also support the fact that we need to all be accountable somehow in regards, and especially with police. And the only way that we're going to be accountable is to sit down with the community leaders. We need to sit at the table to know about this prejudices that everyone has. Now, granted, there's a lot of people out there that I've talked to, they don't think that they have any systemic racism at all. They say, I'm not racist, but in reality, they are. And there's things that we say, there's things that we do, and I think what the problem is we need to make it aware of what's going on. And Trump and Gosar, I don't know if you follow Gosar on Twitter and Facebook, but he says that he has, that his constituents, basically what he said, I can't remember exactly, but he says basically his constituents, it's okay for them because that's how they were brought up, right, to be racist. Now, that doesn't give any light into the fact of what's going on with people of color. And so I believe, and I think, and I know Joe Biden has been talking about this, Mark Kelly's been talking about this, is the only way that we're going to be able to do it is to sit down and discuss what is it that the communities need not us. We can't decide, oh, this is what you need. We need to sit down with the community leaders on all levels and discuss what is it that you need so that we can go ahead and pass legislation that is correct and that is balanced and that it's direct to help them. Because again, you know, I can go, oh, well, I want to do this because I grew up in this neighborhood. No, I want to do this because I saw this in my neighborhood. I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what they're seeing all the time. I want to be able to bring legislation to the table that is going to be able to address it from them telling us what it is that they need so that we can help them, not just in our state, but across the nation.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think we have a few questions. Mavis, was that Barbara has one up there?
Yeah, do you want Maria to be the chat box moderator?
I just saw them. They just came up in, and I didn't know if Maria was asking for them or they're gonna ask for themselves.
Why don't you, tell you what, the first question actually was for Delina. And Delina, you made a statement that millions of dollars paid by immigrants are just sitting there. And we're not sure what you mean. Would you please elucidate on that, please?
Sure. Every year, there are hundreds of thousands, about hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants that pay into the IRS.
Right. But that
money is not getting refunded to them because they're undocumented. But they actually will pay taxes on the monies that they owe. They actually sit down with accountants and they will go ahead and pay the taxes that are owed.
Right. But the government doesn't keep that in a special fund.
Yes, it does. If it knows that it's coming from, yes, because they know that undocumented immigrant, those monies are coming in and that money is being held into a reserve. And there's quite a bit of money in that reserve. And the thing is they don't know really what to do with that money. And so that is why and a lot of them will pay into it because they feel, and this is what some of the confusion came in when John McCain said, if they pay their taxes, then we'll give them citizenship.
Right.
And I think it backs all the way from 2003 when they started talking about this. When if they start paying and they can prove that they were paying taxes into the federal government, that they'll get citizenship.
Right.
And so that's where, so that money is actually being monitored as separate from the IRS fund monies that go in there.
Interesting. Thank you. Was unaware. So news to us all.
I can send the link. I'll send a link to you, Maria.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. And then we'll put it in the newsletter.
Sure.
Now, Stu, you talked about education and how parts of your school district, there's no Wi-Fi, and we know that in rural Arizona there's huge, gigantic, blackouts where people don't have Wi-Fi.
Right.
And so it's an educational issue, but it also affects a community if they don't have that available. What would you, do you have any ideas on how you would go about making that available to everyone?
So one of the things that started years ago when it started at the Navajo Reservation was taking their buses out and creating hotspots so that areas, could have at least access to Wi-Fi, if not at their home, but in a place where they could go much closer to where it otherwise would exist. I just believe that in this country at this time, for us not to create the kind of internet infrastructure, making access available. I mean, I think it was an event for you guys, the fact that I lost you just driving between here and Kingman. I mean, it's ridiculous that the United States, trying to be competitive, in a global marketplace, has an infrastructure like we have. And I think a lot of that is because it was formed as a for-profit infrastructure. So I think we have to look and see what is the role of the federal government in creating a coast-to-coast, border-to-border infrastructure so that we can eliminate this prejudice by making it who can pay the most money to have the best Wi-Fi system.
What about you, Delina? What would you do?
Well, the thing is someone has to pay for it, right? I mean, you could bring somebody to a hotspot that they're going to go ahead and use, but somebody's paying for that hotspot. So what we need to do is incentivize broadband companies, internet providers. And to be honest with you, I'm really excited about Tesla's, the program that he wants to put out so many of these satellites out there that will be able to, people can have Wi-Fi much easier. And so he's already put out 120 satellites in the last, I'd say, 6 months. And it's going to be an amazing thing because he's going to have satellites. One thing that scares me because you're going to have all these satellites out there. And you might not be able to know the stars between satellites. I mean, the only thing you're going to know is, wow, that's moving, so it must be a satellite.
Wow.
But on the other hand, it's also going to help with internet. And so, because broadband's tough, you got to bring the wires in. You're going to have to create. You might have to have eminent domain over properties to be able to bring it into these rural areas. So I'm hoping that we can create something with Tesla in regards to his satellites, and then be able to have some kind of, like what we do when we help rural areas for SNAP programs, and we help rural areas for housing and grant money. Maybe what we can do as a federal government, we can also help these rural schools and healthcare providers so that they also have internet access through these satellites. I think that's the way we're going to go.
You better get ready for that because Elon Musk is not going to make it free. So
Elon Musk, yes, thank you. I said
okay. That's right. You all know.
If I can just jump in for a second.
It's not going to be cheap. So.
No, it's not. But the federal government is also subsidizing Elon Musk for a lot of things that he's doing right now. So there's Congress has power in that regards, the purse strings. So
good idea. Stu, do you want to hop in?
I do. Just quickly while she was speaking, Googled Cox Enterprises last year's revenue was $21 billion. I think we can find a way in an infrastructure where one cable company has a revenue stream of $21 billion to figure out a way to get this access from coast to coast and border to border.
Well, and I think, on Stu's remark there, absolutely. I mean, with the Green New Deal, we want to, and we need to have a new electrical grid system coming in across the nation. And they want to do it for, again, national security, so that we don't have a risk about anybody attacking our energy. So electrical grid. So on that electrical grid, we can put broadband wiring all across, since it's going to be across the nation, we can attach those broadband wiring also at the same time. We did it with telephones back in the very beginning. We could do it for broadband too for rural areas. It's easy. You just have to have people in there that know business and be able to get it done.
There you go.
Rosemary, would you like to, Mavis, can you highlight Rosemary so she can ask her question?
But do we have time for one more or no? That's my concern.
I think one more question would be good.
Thanks, Mavis. My question is, where do you stand, whoever wants to go first? Stu, I see you. So on the idea of defunding the police.
So I think we have to be careful as we use the word defund. I think we saw New York City take a great step. If we think defund is we cut $1 billion out of a police budget and moved it over to other services for the community, I'm all in favor of defunding the police. I think what happens is we let people take the argument to the idea that we want to have no police. So we have to be really careful to make sure we understand what defund the police means. But I can tell you that the fact that our police departments in some cases look like our military, and our military is $700 billion, I think we could look at defunding from both those expense streams and move those monies into our social structure. So I think our police need to do what a policeman or policewoman was intended to do, and we need to stop funding the militarization and the aggressive actions we see in our police department. And I support that.
Thank you for that, Stu. Delina?
I kind of agree with Stu in regards to the police department. I don't think we need to totally defund the police department. I have police relatives in Brooklyn, and you know, I've talked to them, and we actually came to the conclusion that really what we need to defund is the militarization of the police force and the programs that they're being trained to do, like chokeholds and forced, you know, they're forced down on the ground, and they're, some of them are breaking arms. I mean, there's too many things that are going on. But what we need to do is not totally defund it, but we should take some of those monies that we put in there and use it for community resources. So when they're having a mental health problem at a home, you shouldn't send a policeman to go ahead and try to figure out what the heck's going on. Because a lot of times what happens is there's so much anger because there's a police officer there. And then what happens is somebody gets arrested. Whereas what we could do is put money into the social services for mental health and be able to send somebody that, as long as it's not in a dangerous predicament, because then of course that's when you would need to have a police officer, but have social service people go to the home to talk to these people that have these mental health concerns, instead of it rising to where there's danger to the police officer or to like say the patient, but the person. But again, it's these programs that we're funding. It's these militarized equipment that we're giving to them. And those are the things that we need to defund. We need to make them to be neighborhood community police officers again, fund the community resources like social services, and then also be able to then ensure that our National Guard has enough money for the equipment if we ever had to call in the National Guard. And that's what the National Guard's used for those more dangerous predicaments that the police officers get into. And so, you know, I think that we need to defund, but we also need to revamp their policies.
Thank you, Delina. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Rosemary. I think and Maria, thank you so much. I think we're about out of time as far as the questions go.
Yeah.
Can we take a 20-second close? Is that okay? You could.
Sure.
So, and I hope, you know, Delina does too, but I just wanted to really say thank you. That this all started on my very first appearance was up in Prescott, but when I look at what you all have done since the 04 campaign, when I was up there constantly for myself and for John Kerry, I'm just so excited about what is turning in Yavapai County. And no matter what happens, and we hope you all go out and vote, but I will be there for whatever you might ever need. And I'm grateful for what you've done for the causes and for the issues. And I couldn't be prouder to be a part of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Stu.
Thank you, Stu.
Okay, Delina, your chance to pour syrup on us.
Well, you know the history with you guys and me, and I'll tell you right now, you know I fought hard to be able to get on your side and prove myself that I know my stuff. I've got the momentum, and I got the name recognition, and I know legislation, and I'm attacking Gosar on all of the things that he doesn't do for his constituents in Congressional District 4. But I'll tell you right now, it's like Stu said, you guys work extremely hard. when I talk with people from Washington or even the state, I'll tell you right now, Yavapai always does come up because of as a group, because you guys work so hard. I had to say that because I'm very proud to know all of you. I really am. I'm glad that I have stayed in this race, and I'm really glad for the support that many of you give me. And I love you guys.
Thank you so much, Stu and Delina, and thank you for fighting the fight against a tough red congressional district. So we appreciate what you do as far as introducing the idea of having a Democrat run. I mean, this is huge. So thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary, for coming up with the questions and asking them. And thank you, Maria, for being our ICBM once again. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to leave, Mavis. I love,
Okay.
I love Judy and I love John. They know it. So bye, everyone.
I know you candidates have other places to go.
I do. Thank you, Mavis.
Yeah. So going on to announcements, the first announcement is actually mine, is I went to a Rural Voices Summit last weekend and went on a session on racial equity. And this is the same summit where Jeff Deverman and Rosemary Dixon got the award for their work on the Neighborhood Summit for Equity last September. So this is that same summit. And in this session on racial equity, they stressed the importance of education, racial equity education. So what we're going to start doing in the PI newsletter is to start giving you some of the sources. A book, podcast, or a movie that helps us all understand what is going on with racial equity and the lack of in this country. So hopefully this will generate some discussion, maybe a book club or whatever. Let's see where it goes, but let's educate ourselves in terms of racial equity in this country. So that's my pitch. We'll see what happens the first PI newsletter as far as the which movie or podcast or book gets listed first. Okay, the next on our agenda is Michael Adcock, and Michael is going to talk about Move to Amend, which was brought up sometime during Stu and Delina's discussion. So Michael, take it away. Unmute.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate you guys having me on here tonight. I'm representing Prescott Area Move to Amend. We advocate for an amendment to the Constitution. I'm going to start out with a 2-minute video that shows what we think the problem is and the reason that we need an amendment. Let's see, share screen. Coming right up.
Ever feel like your vote doesn't matter? That your elected officials do not represent you? That the unelected Supreme Court allows our elections to be bought by corporations and the ultra-wealthy?
Yeah, I think Thomas Jefferson would have said the more speech, the better. That's what the First Amendment is all about. So long as the people know where the speech is coming from.
But it's not speech. I'm talking about money to back up the speech.
You can't separate speech from the money that facilitates the speech.
Do you feel that our government is run for corporate profits instead of our security and well-being?
What I call it is...
So you agree that the system is rigged?
Absolutely.
Is rigged in favor of the wealthiest?
In favor of companies like ours. It is rigged because we have this corporate welfare that benefits established companies and makes it very difficult for somebody to get started. because this two-tiered society creates welfare for the wealthy and creates obstacles to opportunities for the disadvantaged. I mean, it's cronyism. It's cronyism. It's cronyism.
Do you suspect that our government does not care what you think? Well, you are not alone. There is a national movement called Move to Amend that seeks to restore representative government to the United States through a constitutional amendment. And Move to Amend is active in Prescott. We collect signatures to show support for the real change that will result only when our amendment is ratified. And we march in parades like here in the 2018 Prescott Frontier Days Rodeo Parade. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
All right. Whoops. Hold on a second. I need to go back over here and stop this. Okay. Now I'm back. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I hope that connected with you and that maybe it has motivated you to get active about this thing. So I'm going to show you how you could do that. I want so much for people, whoever's on here tonight, to go to our website and sign to show your support. I'm getting all nervous. Let's see here. And the way you do that is go to movetoamend.org, which this is movetoamend.org right here. And even if you've already signed the motion on paper or whatever, please do it again, because on the back end, the database will purge duplicates. So what you do is you just click on the big blue button. It'll take you over to a place where you can provide your information. What you're doing is endorsing this statement right here, which is a paraphrase of the amendment that we have in front of Congress right now. So it's pretty straightforward. The other thing to do would be, if you're interested in knowing what kinds of stuff goes on, there's a volunteer page. Just click on the red button for volunteer. And down here, you could do stuff like collecting petitions, going on the campaign trail, bird dogging, we call bird dogging candidates, lobbying. That's something we're doing right now with the postcard campaign, which I know you guys are familiar with. So you could come on here and just say, I'm interested in this stuff, and there you go. Okay. So I just want to thank you very much. I'm going to text or chat some information. And again, thanks for all the time you gave me.
Thank you, Michael. And one more time, go on Move to Amend and sign the petition.
Please.
That's it. All right.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. All right. Good program. So next up, we're going to hear from Cheryl Harris, who is going to give us an update on our voter values project.
Hi, everyone. If you've recently attended Prescott Indivisible meetings and or received the PI newsletter, you're familiar with the VVP postcard project that is underway. Our goal is to encourage independent voters in Yavapai County to sign up for the Permanent Early Voting List, PEVL, and to complete a survey on our website at votervaluesproject.com. To date, our volunteers have mailed out 2,000 postcards. An additional 1,230 postcards will be mailed on July 14th. The survey results that have been submitted thus far are being aggregated and will then be forwarded to our research team. Pertinent information will be emailed to the respondents. Some or all of you may have issues that concern you as well, such as healthcare, reform, environmental protection, the direction of our current government. You have the perfect opportunity to voice your concerns by completing the survey at votervaluesproject.com. Invite your family and friends to do the same. And with any big project like this, we need more volunteers. Louise, I'll hand it off to you.
Hello, I'm Louise. I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Voter Values Project, and I'm always looking for help. So we are doing increasing numbers of postcards with each mail out. We're going to be doing hopefully 1,500 at the end of the month and continue that with the goal of mailing out a total of 10,000 by early October. In order to get that done, we need more help, not only with writing postcards, but we have determined that texting to recipients a couple of days before they receive that postcard creates an expectation that they are going to be looking forward, looking for that postcard, and are going to be much more likely to read it and act on it. So sure would love to have some more helpers with our texting and with our postcards. Thank you all very much.
And thank you, Louise. And when Louise says we need help with texting and stuff like that, think about giving us a call, because definitely the more we have helping, the more energy we have, and we're moving in a good forward position. So think about that. All righty, it's time to endorse some candidates. So we are going to hear first from John Lutz, who is running for the Board of Supervisors from LD1. John.
District 1, Mavis.
Oh, my bad.
Not quite an LD, but anyway, I'm not quite that ambitious, but pretty ambitious. Well, you know, when I am invited back to Indivisible for an endorsement, I just feel so honored. I feel like Indivisible is my roots. You know, way back in 2016, I was in November of 2016, I was extraordinarily dismayed. Felt like the rug had been pulled out from underneath the world that I understood. And, you know, when Prescott Indivisible formed in, I think it was February of 17, I felt like I found a home. And also, at the same time, I decided I should get off my ass and start working hard on things and not being so complacent, because it seemed like only through complacency could the Trump era have happened to us. So I went and got a shift at the Democratic Party headquarters at the same time and started attending Indivisible meetings. And after a while, Mary Cole wanted to retire as treasurer of Indivisible, and suddenly I put my hand up and said, well, you know, I know accounting. I can be a treasurer of Indivisible. And so I took on those duties and became part of the steering committee. And that was in 2017 and 2018. At the same time, I became, they at the Democratic Party headquarters, they saw me as, you know, kind of like a useful tool. They said he's willing to do anything. So they also saw fit to promote me to being the events chair for the Pike County Democratic Party in 2018, and became part of the executive committee there. I have to say that I'm just thrilled with the activism that we all have created in Prescott, and you know, it's just been an amazing ride for me to be part of all the actions that we've all taken together and part of the movement that we've started, the progressive movement that we've really nourished and started and all worked together on here in Prescott. And by the end of 2018, they asked me if I'd chair the Democratic Party, and in Yavapai County, and I said, well, if not me, who else? And so I then became the Democratic Party chair, and for 2019, 2020, and I did need to back away from an Indivisible just a little bit there because, I've got, quite a weight on my shoulders with trying to keep the Democratic Party growing and flourishing. And we've really been able to do that together, all of us working together. And it's working in coalition with organizations like Indivisible and the DWPA that we've been able to really, really grow our community here in Prescott. And I'm so proud of what we've all done. And so then towards the end of 2019, I'm one of the things we struggle with in Yavapai County is getting names on the ballot. And I looked around and I talked to so many people about running for office, and it's a very discouraging thing to try and get people to run for office in Yavapai County because, frankly, Democrats lose. And we've got twice as many Republican registrations still here. And so I said, well, who's going to do it if I don't do it? And I just felt like at this point in my life in 2019 that including all of you, I had built a lot of personal capital by, being a Whiskey Row businessman for 40 years and being elevated to being the chair of the Democratic Party. I just felt like if I don't take, I'm 65 years old, if I don't take this personal capital that I've built up and spend it now, when else could it be as worthwhile? So I'm making this run at the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors District 1 with all of you guys behind me and our whole community behind me. And then now, with the COVID reality, it's been quite a change in, how to campaign and that sort of thing. And we've gone to a virtual campaign. And I feel like I'm having a very successful, having been forced into a virtual campaign feels very successful to me. I have, I'm vote. If you guys know about the VAN, the Voter Activation Network, I've spent the last 6 weeks placing 3,000 phone calls to people rated in the 15 to 50. So I'm calling, about 70% Republicans, and the other 30% that I'm calling are right-leaning or middle-leaning independents. And I mean, it's just amazing having the conversations that I'm having. And I've placed, in the last 6 weeks, I've placed 3,000 phone calls with a 28% contact rate. And that's like about the highest contact rate anybody could possibly have. And that's because I'm so persistent. And I'm changing minds. I'm getting people to agree with me. It's amazing what you can do if you work hard enough at it. And we're all making a difference. And I can't thank you guys enough. I think that you're just the most amazing group of people. And you brought me up. It was all because of how Indivisible brought me into activism that wound up me being the chair of the Democratic Party here and therefore running for office. So it all started with you guys. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, John. So our other candidate is Judy Stahl, who's, now I'm afraid to say what you're running for, is AZ State House. So, all right, Judy.
Hi everybody. Thank you so much, PI, for endorsing my campaign for Arizona State House of Representatives for Legislative District 1. And thank you to so many people who are members of PI for supporting me morally, with your volunteer time, financially and spiritually. It is really exciting what's going on in my campaign. It was exciting to hear what John had to say, whom I adore, and Delina and Stu, both of whom are fabulous candidates. Working together is really what's making this change come about in our district and our state. So I just want to tell you a couple things that are going on with the campaign that have been going really well. We just finished the second quarter, and now that I am a candidate running a traditional campaign, which, believe me, I appreciate what Michael Adcock and Move to Amend folks are doing. Michael and I were both involved with Occupy Prescott back in 2011. So corporations are not people, and money does not deserve to have speech. However, as a candidate, I determined that I would run a traditional campaign rather than clean elections so that I could raise the money that I need to be taken seriously and to win. And that is actually exactly what we are doing. And in a week or two, you will see our financial report come out on the Secretary of State's website. And I think you will all be very pleased to see that people are taking our campaign seriously, and many more people will take our campaign seriously when they see these numbers. I got to tell you, as a first-time candidate for public office, I am learning so much. And we literally, right over these days in the middle of 2020, are taking this campaign and stepping it up into the next new gear. And that will be happening as well. There'll be more times when we're going through a new gear, but right now we are in a new gear. I'm going to put a note out for you on the chat when I'm finished, because otherwise you'll be looking at that and going, why'd she write all that? So I want to remind you that I am running single shot. So I am already on the ballot for the general election. I will be the only Democrat on the ballot, and a significant, a very important part of our campaign plan is making sure that you who support me, when it comes to the general election, you vote for me and only me. How it works with my multi-seat race is that the two top vote getters will win. I only need to come in second in order to win, but I intend to come in first, even though there will be two Republicans on the ballot. And in my race, the numbers break down thusly: 50% registered Republicans, 30% unaffiliated or independent voters, 20% Democrats. So the only way I win is if every Democrat in Legislative District 1 gets out, votes for me, and votes for only me. And I have to have a huge number of independents and some Republicans as well in order to win. And we're going to do that. I have Republicans who are supporting me, people I've known for many years, and they are coming around. They are realizing that what I am going to do when elected is I'm going to have common sense. I am the common ground candidate. My hashtag on Twitter is Stall for All, because I will listen to every voice. I will have a civil conversation with anyone. I intend to be a bridge, and I intend to work with anyone who can work towards getting solutions to these intractable problems that we've had under the current leadership. Now, that is very important. Single shot, vote for me and only me. Also, I was on a candidate forum for the Citizens Water Advocacy Group for the candidates from Legislative District 1 about a week ago, and it is on my website at www.judystahl.com under press. You can find it, and it's about 2 hours long with all the candidates. It's got a lot of detail. It's pardon the pun, it's kind of dry, but it's important stuff. And what I want you to know is that while I'm not the world's expert on water, I have a handle on these issues, and I made it clear that I will bring people together to make sure that we are, I'm sorry, I have something weird going on with my computer, to make sure that we are working together. And so I'd love for you to go and check that out. I want you to know that we have t-shirts. I'm wearing one right now. We have tank tops on the website, which you can purchase. We have yard signs coming very soon. I just saw the sample today. It is beautiful. And I want you to know that my main issues, the first issue that I've got is education, and Invest in Ed just handed in 400,000 signatures today to make sure that our teachers are supported so that our children have great teachers, certified teachers. and I'm all behind that. What else do I want to tell you? I guess, is my time up? I didn't set my timer.
Yeah, that was the timer.
Okay, so I'm going to put a note in the chat. We also need volunteers to fulfill our plan, but we are being taken very seriously and for good reason. So we are gaining momentum. This campaign is running on all gears, all cylinders are firing. I'm grateful to PI for your support, and I intend to do you proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Stall for All and John Lutz. So to make our endorsement of these two candidates official, it requires a member vote. So we are going to go into a breakout room of 9. We're going to go into 7 rooms, breakout rooms. When you get into the breakout room, I want you to talk about John and Judy, and everybody votes yes or no on their endorsement. Now, assign somebody in your group to be the reporter, and then when you come back, put the number of yes and no votes in the chat box and which room you're in, 1 through 7. And that way we will quickly count them up and come to a conclusion. All right, does everybody see how this game is played? You've got 5 minutes. Ready? Okay, is everybody putting their votes into the chat room? Okay, group number one. Oh, there we go.
For some reason, I'm out. Why am I out? There I am.
Is that you, Mary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't get back in here.
I
We're supposed to put. Okay. I think Linda's doing ours. Linda, are you doing ours? Room 4.
Yes,
I'm
Linda Miggs.
one.
You're muted, darling.
But you see group 4's vote, right? Mavis?
Yes, I see group
Okay,
4.
Okay.
Yes. Shall I mute myself again?
Sure.
Okay.
Unless you want to say something else. Okay, so I see group 5.
She was right in the middle of a good story too.
So I don't see group 1.
I'm there. I'm group 1.
Who is that?
Marion, this is Marion, the laptop hobo.
Okay, Marion, did you put your results in the chat?
Oh, I forgot to put it in the chat box. I'm sorry. I'll put it there. We're unanimous.
Okay, well, I think this is amazing. I think the vote is unanimous. So officially, Judy and John have been endorsed by Prescott Indivisible. I say, yay. John, you have this, operator error. You have 1 minute with your acceptance speech.
Oh, wait a second. Marion, could you say how many were in your group?
4.
4? Thank you. Okay, sorry, John.
That's quite all right there. My gratitude is tremendous, and thank you so much. And thank you all for, carrying on and building the strength of Prescott Indivisible as we go forward. I feel like as I stepped away, you all became fabulous stewards of the things that we had started in the early days. And you guys are doing a great job. And I thank you all for all of your support and gratitude. And I mean, it's amazing to have a community, to feel like a community is behind you. And I really do feel like I have a community behind me. And so thank you so much. Volunteer for my campaign. There is a spot on the website to do that. We do need callers and postcard writers. And we're probably going to be doing some no contact canvassing too. So if you want to get out and take a walk, we can probably handle that. And also do contribute money. I still need to raise a little bit more money. We are doing pretty well, but we are finding that the cost of direct mail is extremely high. And so if anybody donate money, I have to say that, and volunteer. So, but thank you so much. I appreciate you all just with all of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, John. How about you, Judy? Would you like to say a word or two?
Yes, thank you, Mavis. Thank you, Prescott Indivisible. You've shown your strength through the Summit for Equity. for getting the Ruri Award, through being such a phenomenal indivisible group in Arizona and known throughout the nation. We came together because we didn't like what we saw going on in the White House after the last election. And there were things that we didn't like before that. And we've seen the polarization in this community and throughout our state. But now it is time to make that change. And when I am elected, I will be part of the blue wave that flips the Arizona State House of Representatives to Democratic control for the first time since 1967. I just want to say that there are a lot of folks who look at the numbers and think, well, that's great that you're running, Judy. Thanks so much. But they haven't necessarily been taking us seriously. That is turning around, and they are taking us seriously, and they will take us seriously because we will not be denied. So if you want to work on my campaign, the main thing we need, and I was explaining this in my group, is we need folks for our phone banks is what we need so that we can do the number of reaches to the persuadable voters in this district so that they will press that button for me. And I am going to be bringing balance. The fact that Mark Kelly is on the ballot means that folks will look at both the Republican and the Democratic ballot, and they'll see that I'm the only Democrat and there are 2 Republicans, and they'll choose 1 Democrat and 1 Republican for balance. I need you all to vote for me and only me when it comes to both. And please do vote in the primary for me. And thank you for your support. We will be asking you to promote this campaign, letters to the editor, sharing with your friends, all of the above, so that we can bring about this great, tremendous change, positive change. Thank you all so much. Love you all.
Hey, thank you, Judy, and thank you, John. And it's just such a lovely way to end the meeting tonight. So one last announcement: our steering committee meeting. The next one is on Tuesday, July the 7th, and I will put up an email address. If you would like to come and get an invitation, please send it to info@prescottindivisible.org. And with that, I say thank you for coming and good night.